My father didn't lower his voice when he said it. He announced it like a commandment: hand over your penthouse to your brother. It was supposed to be a wedding toast, but the ballroom went silent. Then his hand met my face so hard the string quartet missed a note. 200 guests watched as champagne froze midair, and my cheek burned red. My mother's whisper cut sharper than the slap, "You've humiliated us." I just smiled. Calm, cold, certain. Because right then they didn't realize they hadn't just slapped their daughter, they'd created their biggest mistake. Before I tell you what happened next, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Have you ever had to stand alone against your own family? People always said my family looked perfect. And maybe we did from the outside. A father with a firm handshake and a tailored suit. A mother who never raised her voice or left the house without lipstick. A son everyone adored even when he failed. And then there was me, the daughter who made it on her own, but never quite belonged. I'm Diana Brooks, 31, a senior software architect who built my career from scratch. No family connections, no trust fund, just code, caffeine, and an iron will. While my brother Carlos was crashing one business idea after another, my parents were wiring him money, covering his messes, praising him for his ambition. When I worked double shifts to pay rent, my father said, "That's what builds character." He loved saying that. Character. As if endurance was the same as love. I left home at 20, swearing I'd never ask for help again. For years, I didn't. I lived in a studio with paper-thin walls typed until my fingers cramped ate ramen, while Carlos posted photos from Cabo. And yet, when I finally bought my penthouse, the one thing that made every sleepless night worth it, my parents barely reacted. My father only said it's too big for one person. I should have known that wasn't an observation. It was foreshadowing. Carlos was always the future. My parents said he had potential even as he sank deeper into debt. Every family dinner turned into a strategy meeting about how to support his next step. My mother Helen smiled sweetly while maneuvering every conversation to make me feel guilty for my success. "You've always had such a strong work ethic," she'd say, slicing into her steak. "Maybe you could help your brother get on his feet." Help meant fix. Fix meant sacrifice. So when Carlos announced he was marrying Vanessa, a polished woman with an influencer smile and eyes that could size up a price tag faster than a person I played along, I showed up, smiled for photos, even gave a toast. I wanted to believe maybe this time they'd see me as part of the family, not the resource funding it. The wedding was everything they'd ever wanted: chandeliers, champagne towers, a rented orchestra. The family name finally sparkled again. I remember standing near the dance floor, clutching my glass, pretending not to notice my father's eyes on me across the room, calculating, weighing. Then he stood up, raised his glass, and made his toast. And that's when everything broke. The morning after the wedding, my cheeks still throbbed. A faint outline of my father's hand lingered like a brand I couldn't wash off. The city outside moved on as if nothing had happened, traffic, humming rain, tapping the glass, but something inside me had shifted. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Cousins, aunts, numbers I hadn't seen in years. Each message carried the same tone: disappointment disguised as concern. "You shouldn't have provoked him. He's your father, Diana. Be the bigger person." Not one of them mentioned the slap. Not one asked if I was okay. Then Carlos texted, "You really ruined everything. Vanessa's furious. Mom says you owe Dad an apology." I stared at the screen, the words blurring. Then I did something I'd never done before. I blocked his number. For the next few days, silence replaced the noise. Until it didn't. On Thursday morning, someone knocked. I opened the door to find Carlos and Vanessa standing there like they'd been cast in a commercial for entitlement. Vanessa wore white jeans and held a measuring tape. Carlos had a coffee cup and that same smug smirk. "We just need a few quick measurements," he said. For what I asked, though, I already knew. "Our furniture," Vanessa replied, stepping forward. "We're moving in after the honeymoon. Mom said you'd agreed." I laughed once, short, sharp, hollow. "Get out, don't make this harder than it has to be," Carlos said. "You're single, you don't need all this space." The audacity burned hotter than the slap ever did. "You need to leave now." I closed the door before they could speak again. The lock clicked final and satisfying. By evening, my phone buzzed with a notification: "New group chat." Diana's Penthouse transfer. 12 members. The first message was a photo of paint swatches. The second, from my mother, Carlos and Vanessa moving date, confirmed 2 weeks. For a long time, I just stared at it. Then I typed, "This isn't happening." Seconds later, my father called. His voice roared through the speaker. "You ungrateful brat, after everything we've done for you." Like what I said, quietly. "What exactly have you done for me?" He didn't answer. He just hung up. That night, I sat in the dark with a glass of water, not wine, watching the city lights blink like signals from another life. I thought about every time I'd given in, every guilt trip I'd swallowed, every time I'd mistaken manipulation for love. I realized something brutal and freeing. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted ownership. The next Sunday, I showed up for dinner out of habit or maybe curiosity. The house smelled the same as it always did, garlic lemon polish control. My mother greeted me like nothing had happened. My father didn't. He waited until halfway through the meal to slam his hand on the table. "Enough," he barked. "Carlos gets your keys next weekend or you're out of this family." My mother's fork clinked softly against her plate. "It's what's best for everyone." Carlos smirked, eyes glinting. I folded my napkin, placed it down, and stood. "Then consider this dinner my last." No one stopped me. No one even called after me. Outside, the night air felt sharp and alive. I drove home without music, without tears. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was clean. They thought they'd broken me. They didn't realize they'd just freed me. I didn't sleep that night. The slap, the dinner, the silence, it all looped like static. But somewhere between midnight and dawn, anger cooled into focus. If they wanted to take what I'd built, I'd show them what that really meant. At 7 a.m., I called Jasmine, my best friend and attorney. "It's time," I said. "Time for what?" "For me to stop playing the quiet daughter." By noon, we were sitting in her office, coffee untouched between us. I laid out my phone, my laptop, a USB drive full of messages, screenshots, voicemails, every insult and demand they'd thrown my way. Jasmine scrolled through, her face hardening. "This is harassment," she said. "You have enough for a restraining order." "Not yet," I replied, "but I will." Next, I called Marcus, my closest ally at work, the one person who'd seen my family's performance at the wedding. We met at a small cafe downtown. The air smelled like rain and espresso. "You were right," he said before I even sat down. "Carlos is bragging at the office. He told HR he's moving into your place. He's been using your name to get a promotion." I felt the heat rise in my chest. "He used my name, your reputation," Marcus said. "And he has no idea you own part of Westview through your holding company." That sentence shifted everything. My brother worked for a company I quietly helped build. He thought I was just another employee. He had no idea I owned 30% of it. "Good," I said. Let him keep talking. The next day, I contacted my building's head of security, a man named Reynolds, who owed me a favor. Within hours, he sent me footage Carlos and Vanessa trying to enter my penthouse while I was out. Vanessa even posed for a selfie by the door, tagging the location as future home. Jasmine nearly laughed when I showed her. "They're making your case for you." "Exactly," I said. "I'm done reacting. It's my turn to move first." That night, I created 3 folders on my computer, legal financial evidence. Each one filled quickly, recordings, letters, screenshots, bank transfers. Every lie they told became a receipt. Every guilt trip became a weapon. By Friday, Jasmine had drafted cease and desist papers and a preliminary restraining order. Marcus pulled financial records showing I'd covered loans my father never repaid. Every document drew a clearer picture they'd used me for years, and I'd let them. Until now. When Jasmine asked what came next, I didn't hesitate. "Invite them here. All of them. They want a family meeting. They'll get one." Her eyebrows rose. "You sure you're ready for that?" "I've been ready my whole life." Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. I looked out at the city from my glass walls, buildings glowing against the storm, the world I'd built without their help, and felt something settle inside me. Calm. Absolute. "They thought I'd break," I said quietly, but I was just getting started. Friday came with rain, the kind that blurred the skyline and made the whole city hum. I wore a white blouse, black slacks, hair pulled low. Calm. Controlled. Unshakable. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw umbrellas, formal coats, and familiar faces already set in scorn. My father stood front and center with a manila envelope. My mother clutched paint swatches like this was still about decor. Carlos, smug as ever, held his phone, probably recording his victory. I opened the door and stepped aside. "Come in." They filed through the hall, shaking off rain, murmuring about the view. My father looked around, nodding. "You've done well for yourself," he said. "Now it's time to do right by your family." "Funny," I said. "I thought right and wrong were the same for everyone." I gestured toward the dining area. 4 people waited behind me: Jasmine Marcus, my financial advisor, and Reynolds, head of security. They looked sharp, quiet, professional. The atmosphere changed. My father's smile vanished. "What is this family meeting?" I said. "You wanted one." My mother's voice turned sugar-sweet. "Diana, we didn't mean for things to get ugly. Just sign the transfer papers so we can move forward." "Of course," I replied, handing her a blue folder. "Start by reading this." They opened it, pages of ownership documents, deeds, corporate filings. My father frowned. "What is this nonsense?" "Proof," I said evenly, "that this isn't just my penthouse. I own the building, and 30% of Westview, the company that employs your son." Carlos froze, his expression flickering from arrogance to panic. "You're lying." Marcus stepped forward. "Not lying. Confirmed through SEC filings and HR records. She's your boss's boss." The color drained from my brother's face. My father's fists tightened. "You think this scares me?" Jasmine pressed play on her phone. The room filled with my father's recorded voice, his shouting his threats, my mother's cold commands, every syllable sharp and undeniable. "This recording," Jasmine said, "is already filed with the court along with a restraining order." My mother's lips trembled. "You wouldn't do that to your own family. You did it to yourselves," I answered. For a moment, the only sound was the rain. I watched them, all 3 of them, realize the power balance had shifted forever. Carlos lunged forward, face twisted. "You think you're better than us?" Reynolds stepped in front of me, calm but firm. "Sir, I'd suggest you leave." I didn't flinch. I looked at my father. "You called me ungrateful, but I paid your mortgage, your debts, and your son's tuition. You drained me dry and still called it love." He swallowed hard. "We're family, no," I said quietly. "We're a pattern I just broke." I opened the door. "You'll all leave now. If you contact me again, everything in those folders becomes public. Carlos, your company, will know the full story. Mom, your friends will know what you did. Dad, your reputation will vanish faster than you can rebuild it." My mother's mascara streaked. My father's shoulders slumped. Carlos glared, but the fight was gone. One by one, they walked out into the rain. Vanessa lingered at the doorway, eyes soft. I didn't know she whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded once. "Then start being different." When the elevator doors closed, I stood still, breathing in the sound of thunder rolling over glass. Jasmine touched my arm. "You okay?" "I'm finally fine," I said. We watched the rain streak down the windows, washing away the last traces of them. The storm outside was loud, but inside it was silent, clean earned mine. They thought they could control me. They didn't realize they'd just taught me how to win. The next morning, the city gleamed like it had been scrubbed clean overnight. I woke up to sunlight instead of tension, quiet instead of chaos. My phone lay face down on the counter. No calls, no guilt, no manipulation waiting behind a glowing screen. Jasmine called around noon. "Restraining orders approved," she said. "They can't come near you or contact you again." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Then I guess it's finally over." "It's over," she confirmed. News traveled fast. By midweek, Carlos had been terminated. HR discovered he'd falsified records, used my name, and shared confidential information. Marcus texted, "He's out for good." My parents stayed silent, but their absence felt lighter than any apology ever could. I spent that evening boxing up the last remnants of them old photos, inherited trinkets, the illusion that I ever needed their approval. When the boxes were sealed, the apartment felt larger, brighter, like it had exhaled with me. A week later, I signed documents creating a scholarship for women in tech without family support. The check wasn't charity, it was closure. Turning my pain into something that could outlast their cruelty felt like the only justice that mattered. That night, I stood by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the skyline shimmer against the fading storm clouds. For years, I'd fought to be seen. Now I realized I didn't need their eyes on me at all. The city looked alive, new untouched. And so was I. I used to believe family meant loyalty, no matter the cost. But real loyalty doesn't demand your silence or your soul, it respects your boundaries. I didn't lose a family that night. I lost a prison built out of guilt. Now, every sunrise hitting these glass walls reminds me peace isn't given, it's earned. If you've ever had to stand alone against people who were supposed to love, you know this: you're not weak for walking away. You're brave for saving yourself. Hit like, share your story in the comments, and subscribe for more like this.
If you had told me that the night I tried to build a forever would be the night it all burned to ash, I would have laughed. I would have said you were being dramatic. But now, every time I smell basil or hear champagne corks pop, I feel it all again, the moment my world quietly collapsed in front of everyone I loved. My name is Lena Collins, and I'm 29 years old. I used to believe I had everything figured out: a job I loved, a family that adored me, and a man who felt like home. The private dining room at Giovanni's glowed in warm amber light. Strings of fairy bulbs framed the ceiling, and my mom's laughter mixed with the clinking of cutlery and the soft melody from a violinist in the corner. It was perfect, everything exactly as I'd planned. Tonight wasn't just a family dinner. It was a celebration of my parents' 30th anniversary and my mom's 60th birthday, a double milestone that deserved something unforgettable. But for me, it was more than that. Tonight, I wanted to make my boyfriend Gordon Carter a permanent part of our family. My brother Eric sat across from me, teasing his fiancée about her terrible Italian pronunciation. My dad told corny jokes that made my mom roll her eyes and laugh anyway. Even my cousin Ava, always glued to her phone, looked up to capture a few happy photos. It was one of those rare golden evenings where everything felt right, warm, safe, untouched by the world's ugliness. Gordon sat beside me, looking every bit like the man I thought I'd grow old with. He had that easy charm that drew people in, confident funny, in that subtle way that never tried too hard. He'd spent half the evening chatting with my father about classic cars and making my mom blush with compliments. He just fit. He was wearing a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled slightly at the elbows, relaxed, effortless, comfortable. His hand brushed mine under the table more than once, and each time it sent a quiet warmth through me. I was nervous, but it was a good kind of nervous, the kind that comes right before something beautiful. Inside my clutch, hidden between my phone and a folded napkin, was a small velvet box. My grandmother's ring. A thin gold band with a single modest diamond. It wasn't flashy, but it had a quiet history passed down through the women in my family for generations. Every one of them had found lasting love with it. I wanted to be next. Dinner wound down. Plates cleared. The room filled with easy conversation and laughter. I glanced at Eric. He caught my eye and gave me the faintest nod. He knew what was coming. I took a deep breath. My heart thudded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Everyone, I said, tapping my glass lightly. Before dessert, I just want to say a few words. The room quieted. My mom's eyes softened with that gentle curiosity mothers have. My dad leaned back, smiling proudly. Tonight's special, I began, my voice trembling just slightly. 30 years of love, patience, and partnership. Mom, Dad, you've shown me what it means to build a life together. You've shown me that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard. My mom teared up, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. My father reached over and squeezed her hand. And you, I continued, turning to Gordon. You've taught me what it feels like to be truly seen. For 5 years, you've been my best friend, my safe place, the one who makes me believe in forever. So tonight I want to take a leap, one that I've thought about for a long time. I pushed my chair back and stood. My knees felt weak, but my smile didn't falter. I reached into my clutch, pulled out the velvet box, and dropped to one knee. Gasps rippled across the table. My mom's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with joy. My dad's smile grew a proud, knowing look. Ava was already filming on her phone, whispering, "Oh my God, she's doing it." Gordon froze. For a moment, I thought it was shock. Then I saw the flicker of irritation in his eyes. I opened the box, my voice shaking but full of love. "Gordon Carter," I said softly, "will you marry me?" The silence that followed wasn't romantic, it was sharp. unforgiving. Gordon exhaled a loud theatrical sigh and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Lena. He muttered, his tone flat. God, this is awkward. A nervous laugh bubbled somewhere down the table, then died immediately. My heartbeat turned into a dull roar in my ears. Awkward, I repeated quietly. He pushed his chair back and stood. His voice was calm, but every word cut like glass. Get up, Lena. Please. You're making a scene. The air in the room vanished. My dad frowned, his voice stern. Gordon, what are you? Gordon held up a hand. I can't do this. I can't pretend. He looked down at me, not with pity, but annoyance. I didn't want to say it like this, but you forced my hand. My fingers trembled on the open ring box. Say what? He hesitated, then said it, his tone brutally casual. I'm seeing someone else. Her name's Jenna. The words dropped like a stone into a still pond. My mom's hand slipped from her glass water, spilling silently across the tablecloth. My father's jaw locked tight. Behind me, Ava gasped, phone shaking in her hands. I stared up at him, my mouth dry. What? Gordon sighed again, like a man explaining something tedious. It's been 6 months. I didn't plan for this to come out like this, but you should know. The world blurred. Every sound, the clinking plates, the violin, the breath of people watching turned into static. 6 months. Half a year. Half a year of lies, of fake smiles, of him kissing me goodbye while texting her goodnight. My voice barely worked. You brought me here. Knowing this, he looked away. I didn't want to ruin your parents' night. My dad shot up from his chair, but my mom gripped his arm, eyes brimming with tears. And suddenly the numbness set in. The shock evaporated, replaced by a terrifying clarity. I closed the ring box slowly, the soft click echoing in the silence. It sounded final, like a door closing. Thank you for your honesty, I said quietly. My voice calm but foreign, like it belonged to someone else. Then I stood, smoothed my dress, and turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry I ruined your night. My mother shook her head, whispering, no, sweetheart, but I didn't let her finish. I placed the box gently on the table beside my untouched dessert, gave my brother a small broken smile, and walked out. No yelling, no tears, just silence. The sound of my heels on the marble floor was the only thing that followed me out into the cold October air. The night that was supposed to begin my forever had just ended it, and as the door closed behind me, I heard someone inside whisper, Ava, stop filming. But it was too late. The world already had my story, and soon I'd realize it wasn't mine anymore. For the first 2 days, I didn't leave my apartment. The world outside felt like a place I no longer belonged to, too loud, too cruel, too alive. I just lay on the couch in the same dress I wore that night, staring at the ceiling as time blurred into nothing. My phone buzzed endlessly, but I couldn't bring myself to look at it. Not the calls, not the messages, not even the soft knocks on my door from my brother. When I finally turned it on, I was greeted by hundreds of missed notifications, texts from family, friends, and numbers I didn't even recognize. But one stood out, a message from my cousin Ava. Lena, please don't freak out, but the video's everywhere. You need to see this. My stomach dropped. For a moment, I couldn't even move. Then, trembling, I opened the link she'd sent. It was a video on TikTok. The caption read, when you propose to the love of your life and find out he's been cheating for 6 months. Team Lena #Shahab Proposalgate. It had over 2.3 million views. There I was on screen, smiling nervously, giving my speech about love, and forever my voice cracking as I knelt on one knee. And then Gordon's sigh, his expression of mild annoyance, his words crystal clear, I'm seeing someone else. I watched myself freeze, lips, trembling eyes wide and glassy. Watched my mother's hand fly to her mouth. Watched Gordon's face twist with the kind of irritation that people usually reserve for an overcooked meal. And then I watched myself close the ring box and walk away. The clip ended there, but the comment section was still scrolling by, faster than I could read. Who does that to someone in front of her family? She handled it like a queen. Didn't even cry. Absolute power move. That man deserves to lose everything. The calm, thank you for your honesty, was colder than the Arctic. I love her. I set the phone down, heart pounding. This wasn't just a video, it was a wildfire. Ava called seconds later. Her voice was shaking. Lena, it's gone viral. Like really viral. You're trending on Twitter. Everyone's calling Gordon a sociopath. I didn't know whether to laugh or vomit. All I could whisper was, why would you post that? I didn't mean for it to blow up, she said quickly. I wanted people to see what he did to you. He humiliated you in front of everyone, Lena. You didn't deserve that." Her voice cracked. "You were so calm, so strong. People are rooting for you." Rooting for me. That word felt strange, unreal. I opened Twitter, and there it was. #Team Lena, trending at #3 worldwide. Memes, reaction videos, duets. Someone had even edited slow-motion footage of me standing up with dramatic piano music and the caption, "The moment she realized she didn't need him." The internet had decided who the villain was. And for once, it wasn't me. Gordon's social media accounts had already been flooded with comments. "You broke her heart on camera. Hope your side chick enjoys unemployment. The internet never forgets." I felt a strange, dizzying mix of satisfaction and guilt. Yes, he deserved it, but I hadn't wanted this. The video was everywhere. My heartbreak was now public property. My mom called next, her voice trembling. "Oh, honey, I saw the video, the comments. It's awful what he did, but people are supporting you. Strangers even." "I don't want support," I whispered. "I just want it to stop." But it didn't. By the next day, news outlets were reposting it under headlines like "Woman proposes to boyfriend, his cruel response breaks the internet." Gordon's workplace, a major consulting firm, released a statement distancing themselves from his personal conduct. And Jenna, the woman he'd left me for, deleted all her social media. A few days later, a new post appeared on Gordon's now private Instagram. "Sometimes relationships end because people want different things. Please respect my privacy." The comments destroyed him. Different things like honesty. "You mean she wanted loyalty and you wanted attention." I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of being the face of a story I never wanted told. Even at work, people whispered. The receptionist smiled awkwardly when I walked in, as if unsure whether to congratulate or console me. My boss called me into his office, offering a sympathetic smile. "Take a few days off, Lena. The world's watching right now. You don't owe anyone your story." But that was the thing, I didn't have control of my story anymore. That night, I sat on my balcony scrolling through the endless stream of posts. One caught my eye, a tweet that simply said, "She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just walked away. That's power." I stared at it for a long time, the words blurring. Maybe power didn't look like revenge. Maybe it looked like silence. When my phone buzzed again, I thought it was Ava, but it wasn't. It was an unknown number. "You think humiliating me online makes you better than me? You've ruined my life, Lena. I hope you're happy. Gordon." For a moment, I just stared at his message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I typed one sentence. "You ruined your own life, Gordon. The internet just showed everyone." I hit send, blocked his number, and finally exhaled. The city outside hummed cars, music, laughter, all still moving, uncaring. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something strange creeping in beneath the exhaustion. Peace, because while Gordon was losing control of his image, I was slowly reclaiming mine. If I'd learned anything in those weeks after the video went viral, it was this: karma doesn't always come fast, but when it does, it's merciless. By the time a month passed, Gordon's name was everywhere. Screenshots of his old posts, the ones about loyalty and integrity, were being shared with captions like, "Oh, the irony." Every brand he'd worked with dropped him. His firm suspended him pending internal review. And Jenna, well, she'd gone from smug to silent in record time. At first, I avoided reading about them. I didn't want to feed that part of myself that still cared, the part that wanted to know how bad things had gotten. But curiosity is a cruel thing. One night I found myself searching his name. There it was, a screenshot from Jenna's since-deleted Instagram story. Some people build their careers on manipulation. When the truth comes out, don't say I didn't warn you. So now they were turning on each other, publicly. The perfect couple imploding for everyone to see. I should have felt victorious, but instead I felt hollow. Their downfall didn't make me feel healed. It just reminded me of the wreckage we'd all left behind. My therapist, Dr. Morgan, had warned me about this. "You can't rebuild by waiting for others to collapse," she'd said, tapping her pen gently against her notebook. "You have to build for yourself, not against them." So I tried. I poured myself into work. I started leading a new campaign, an urban renewal project that paired small local artists with new public spaces. It was the kind of creative, hopeful thing I'd always dreamed of doing. Each morning I walked into the office determined to act like I was okay, and for the most part I was, until the day I opened my inbox and saw a name that made my stomach twist. Jenna Brooks. The subject line read, "You win." Against my better judgment, I clicked. "You've ruined my life. I lost my job. My family won't even talk to me. Marco dumped me after that video. Everyone hates me. You didn't have to let your cousin post it. You could have stopped this. I read it 3 times, each word more venomous than the last. It wasn't remorse. It was resentment. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry for what she lost. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A dozen replies burned in my mind. Things I wanted to say, things I'd never said that night. But instead, I closed the laptop, because answering her would mean opening the door again, and I'd finally started to close it. A week later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a voice I hadn't heard in months came through the speaker. "Lena, this is Margaret Carter, Gordon's mother." I froze. "Mrs. Carter." Her tone was tight polite, in the way sharp knives are polished. "I'm calling because I thought you should know Gordon hasn't been the same since that incident. He lost his job, his reputation, everything." I swallowed, unsure what to say. "I'm sorry to hear that." She ignored it. "I just think it's cruel what your cousin did. Posting that video. You might think it was justice, but what it did to him was what." I cut in, my voice low. "A consequence." She exhaled sharply. "You always had a way with words, Lena. Maybe that's what made him feel so small." The insult landed like a slap, but I didn't let her have the satisfaction of a reaction. "Mrs. Carter," I said quietly, "your son lied to me for 6 months. He humiliated me in front of my family, and then he blamed me when the truth came out. Whatever he's going through now, that's not my doing. That's his reflection catching up with him." The silence on the other end was heavy. Then she said coldly, "You're just like your cousin. Vindictive." And then she hung up. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, the words echoing. Vindictive. No, not vindictive. Free. That night, I met up with Ava for dinner. She looked nervous, like a kid waiting to get scolded. "I'm sorry," she blurted out the moment I sat down. "I know posting that video made everything worse." I shook my head. It didn't make it worse. It just made it public. Ava bit her lip. "Do you hate me for it?" "No," I said honestly, because for the first time in a long time, the world saw him for who he really was. I didn't have to explain or justify anything. That's more closure than I ever thought I'd get. She smiled weakly. "You're handling this way better than I would." I smiled back, but there was a weight behind it. Because what I didn't tell her was that sometimes when I closed my eyes, I still saw that night, the way he looked down at me, like I was something inconvenient. Healing, I realized, wasn't about forgetting. It was about learning to remember without pain. 3 months passed. I moved into a new apartment, small, bright mine. I deleted the last photos of Gordon from my phone, and I started a new routine: morning runs, evening journaling, therapy twice a week. Dr. Morgan had me write something she called a release letter, not to send, just to write. It began with, "I forgive you for what you did, but I don't forgive you for pretending you loved me while you did it." By the time I signed my name at the bottom, the tears had stopped. That same week, a message appeared in my inbox. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize. "Lena, please, I need to see you. Just one conversation. I know I don't deserve it, but I can't stop thinking about what I did to you. Please." Gordon. My fingers hovered over delete, but this time I didn't click it right away. Because for the first time since that night, I didn't feel anger. I felt curiosity. What could a man like that possibly have to say after everything? I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, closure doesn't always come from silence. And with that, I typed a single reply. "Tomorrow, Cafe Meriden, noon." I told myself it was just curiosity, that I didn't care anymore, that meeting Gordon one last time would finally close the door, seal it shut so I could move on completely. But the truth. A part of me wanted to look him in the eye and make him see what he'd broken. The next day, I walked into Cafe Meriden exactly at noon. It was quiet, tucked away on a narrow street lined with old trees and glass windows fogged by the cold. I'd chosen it on purpose, neutral ground. No memories, no meaning. Gordon was already there, sitting by the window, staring into a half-empty cup. He looked smaller. His once polished hair was disheveled, his suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. The confident man who'd humiliated me in front of a crowd now looked like a ghost of himself. When he saw me, he stood awkwardly, almost too fast. "Lena," he breathed, a sad smile tugging at his lips. "You came." I said I would. I replied, my tone even. I didn't sit right away, just looked at him, really looked. It wasn't pity I felt. It was distance, like staring at a stranger who happened to share a face I used to love. He gestured to the seat across from him. "Please." I sat. The silence between us was heavy, filled with everything unsaid. The ghosts of promises, the weight of betrayal, the echo of that awful sigh in the restaurant. He spoke first. I don't know where to start. Try the beginning, I said simply. He ran a hand through his hair. I messed up. Badly. I know that. I've spent months trying to make sense of why I did what I did. I guess I got scared. I almost laughed. Scared of what Gordon being loved. He winced. No, of being seen. You knew me too well. You knew every flaw, every failure, and you still looked at me like I was better than I was. I couldn't handle that kind of pressure. I stared at him. So instead of talking to me, you cheated. He flinched like the word physically hurt him. It wasn't supposed to happen. Jenna was. Don't I cut him off sharply. Don't say her name like it was a mistake you tripped into. You made a choice. Every day. For 6 months. He sighed. You're right. Something in me stirred, not compassion, but clarity. For years, I'd built him up in my mind as something extraordinary, clever, composed, charming. But sitting there, he looked ordinary. A man terrified of accountability. He leaned forward, his voice low. I see you on TV sometimes. The interviews, the features about the proposal video. Everyone calls you brave. That wasn't bravery, I said quietly. That was survival. He nodded, slowly, eyes glassy. Still. You look good. Happier. I am, I said simply. That's when his mask cracked. His expression twisted, part regret, part envy. I lost everything, Lena, he whispered. My job, my reputation, even my friends. Do you know what that's like? Yes, I said, I do. I lived it first. For a second, neither of us spoke. The rain outside began to fall, streaking the window beside us. Then his voice dropped lower, almost pleading. I just thought maybe there's still something between us. Some part of you that... I stopped him right there. Gordon, don't. He looked at me confused. Don't what? Don't rewrite this story, I said softly but firmly. You didn't love me. You loved what I did for you. The way I made you feel like the best version of yourself even when you were lying to me. That's not love. That's ego. He blinked his throat, working like he couldn't swallow. I'm not that person anymore. Maybe not, I said, leaning back. But I'm not the woman you left either. For a long moment, all I heard was the patter of rain and the faint hum of the espresso machine. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. You know, when that video went viral, I thought about ending it. The words hit like a slap. My chest tightened. What? He looked up, his voice cracking. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't show my face anywhere. People I'd known for years cut me off. I lost everything, Lena. I thought maybe if I disappeared, it would all stop. I froze, unsure how to respond. I didn't hate him, not enough to want that, but I also couldn't forget what he'd done. I took a slow breath. I'm sorry you felt that way. But what happened wasn't just about you. You didn't just break your own life, you broke mine too. The difference is, I built something from the wreckage. He lowered his eyes, whispering, I know. And that's why I reached out. To tell you I see it now. I ruined the best thing I ever had. I wanted to believe him. For a second, I almost did. But then he looked up with that same old look, the one that always tried to twist guilt into sympathy. I just thought, he murmured, maybe we could start over. That did it. Any trace of compassion evaporated. I stood my chair, scraping softly against the floor. Gordon, you didn't come here to apologize. You came here because you're lonely. You miss the version of yourself that existed when I still believed in you. But I don't anymore. He rose halfway from his seat, desperate. Lena, please. I shook my head. No, you taught me something I'll never forget. He swallowed hard. What's that? That peace, I said quietly, is worth more than closure. For a heartbeat, we just stood there, him broken and reaching, me finally free. Then I turned and walked out into the rain. No tears, no shaking, just calm. Behind me through the glass, I saw him sink back into his chair, shoulders slumped, head in his hands. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need him to understand my pain. It was enough that I did. That night, as I lay in bed, the sound of the rain still in my ears, I felt something shift inside me. Not revenge, not triumph. Something quieter. Release. A year can change everything. Not the kind of change that comes with grand gestures or cinematic moments, but quiet, steady shifts. The kind that sneak up on you while you're too busy rebuilding yourself to notice. 12 months after that night at Cafe Meriden, I found myself standing under golden lights again. But this time, it wasn't a dinner filled with betrayal. It was the City Design Awards Gala, a celebration of creativity, resilience, and renewal. My project, the Haven Initiative, a community art space built for women recovering from loss, had been nominated for Project of the Year. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who once thought she needed love to be whole had built something that helped others find strength on their own. I stood near the edge of the ballroom, the low hum of conversation buzzing around me. My reflection shimmered faintly in the mirrored walls. Sleek black gown, hair swept back, the faintest hint of red lipstick. I didn't recognize the woman staring back, and that realization made me smile. Because I'd finally become someone I didn't have to explain. Lena, a voice called softly behind me. I turned to see Ryan, my colleague and co-lead on the project. Calm eyes, gentle smile. The kind of man who didn't speak to fill silence, but to honor it. He handed me a glass of champagne. You ready? Ready for what I teased. For them to say your name in about 30 seconds. I laughed, shaking my head. You're way too confident. Not confidence, he said, just facts. The host's voice boomed through the speakers. And the award for Project of the Year goes to the Haven Initiative, led by Lena Collins and Ryan Parker. For a moment, everything stopped. The room, the applause, even my heartbeat. Then I heard it, the roar of clapping, the cheers, the bright sound of my name filling the air. I walked to the stage under a canopy of light, my heart steady. Ryan squeezed my shoulder. Before I took the mic, his voice low. You earned this. I smiled, and for once I believed it. Thank you, I began. This project started as an idea born from pain, a place where women could turn their heartbreak into art, their grief into creation. I didn't know at the time that I was really building it for myself, too. Because sometimes the walls we design for others end up saving us. Applause thundered, cameras flashed, but all I felt was peace. Afterward, the ballroom buzzed with congratulations. I floated from one conversation to another, all warm smiles and laughter. And then I saw him. Across the room, Gordon. He stood near the back, slightly apart from the crowd, a drink in hand, his posture hesitant. He wasn't in a tux like the other guests, just a dark suit, slightly wrinkled. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there before. For a moment, our eyes met. And just like that, the noise faded, replaced by the ghost of 1,000 memories I'd already buried. He started toward me, slowly weaving through the crowd. I didn't move. Lena, he said when he reached me. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. Congratulations. Thank you, I replied evenly. It's been a long road. He nodded, eyes flicking toward the stage. You did it. You really turned it all around. I had to, I said softly. Nobody else was going to do it for me. He gave a humorless chuckle. You look happy. Different. I am. He hesitated, searching my face. I've thought about what I said that night, what I did, every day. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He continued, his tone low. You know, when everything fell apart, I told myself I hated that video. But after a while, I realized it saved me too. It forced me to see what kind of man I'd become. I looked at him then, not with anger, but with the kind of distant empathy you feel for someone standing on the shore while you've already sailed away. I'm glad you finally saw it, I said. He swallowed. Do you ever think about us, about what could have been? I smiled gently. I used to. But I realized I wasn't missing us. I was missing the version of myself who believed love had to hurt to be real. He blinked, caught off guard. That's not fair. No, I said, it's honest. He looked at me for a long time, the kind of look people give when they know it's the last time they'll ever see you this way. Then he nodded, his voice breaking. You deserve better, Lena. You always did. I know, I said quietly, and now I finally believe it too. He started to say something else, but a voice called my name, Ryan's. When I turned toward him, Gordon took a step back, realizing the moment was over. Ryan joined me, smiling. They're waiting for you press photos. He nodded politely to Gordon, then turned to me. You okay? I looked at Gordon one last time. He was already turning away, swallowed by the crowd. Yeah, I said softly. I'm okay. Ryan smiled. Good, because I think this is only the beginning for you. I exhaled slowly. Feels like it. As we walked toward the photographers, flashes went off, bright, blinding, alive. I didn't look back. Not once. Because the thing about closure is it doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from simply moving forward. The applause, the laughter, the lights, they weren't about revenge or validation. They were about peace. About becoming someone I could be proud of. And as I stood under the camera lights, smiling beside Ryan, I realized something profound. The same world that once watched me break was now watching me rise. This time on my own terms. They called me the girl who got rejected on camera. That was how it started. My heartbreak turned into headlines. My humiliation compressed into a viral clip that millions watched, shared, and dissected. But that's not who I am anymore, because what the internet didn't see was everything that came after. They didn't see me learning to breathe again after the silence stopped hurting. They didn't see the nights I stayed up rebuilding myself, one boundary, one choice, one honest word at a time. And they didn't see the moment I realized that forgiveness isn't about setting someone else free. It's about setting yourself free. The video that broke my heart ended up giving me something priceless. A voice. Months after the gala, I stood in front of a small crowd at the opening of the Haven Initiative. It was a crisp spring morning. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, scattering across paintings, sculptures, and poetry written by women who had turned their pain into art. I stepped up to the mic, looking at the faces in front of me, faces that carried the same mix of fragility and fire that I used to see in my own reflection. I once thought my life ended in a restaurant I began, but it didn't. It just changed direction. Pain doesn't mean your story's over, it just means you're finally being rewritten. There was a stillness in the air, the kind that comes when words sink deep instead of passing by. After the event, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 23. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "I saw your video when I was going through my breakup," she said. "I thought I'd never recover, but watching you stand back up, it made me believe I could too." I smiled, tears blurring my vision, because in her I saw the person I used to be and the woman I'd become. Later that evening, I sat in my office staring out at the city skyline. The building lights shimmered like constellations, and somewhere down below, life kept moving, messy, unpredictable, beautiful. A soft knock on my door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Ryan holding 2 cups of coffee, his sleeves rolled up, his smile gentle. "You're still here," he said. "Big day." I grinned. Couldn't leave just yet. I like seeing it alive. He placed a cup on my desk and leaned against the doorway. "You know, I've watched people talk about that video for months. But what they don't realize is that you're not famous because of how you were broken, you're known because of how you rebuilt." I didn't answer right away. I just let the warmth of his words settle. "Ryan," I said after a moment, "do you ever think about how strange it is? The world saw the worst night of my life, and somehow it led to the best version of me." He smiled softly. "Maybe that's how transformation always works, breaking first, then becoming." We stood there in the quiet glow of the office, the city stretching endlessly beyond the glass. No dramatic music, no grand gesture, just peace. After he left, I sat down at my desk and opened my journal, the same one I'd started in therapy a year ago. On the first page, I'd written, "I forgive you, Gordon, not because you deserve peace, but because I do." Tonight, I turned to the last page and wrote, "You taught me that love built on lies will always collapse. You taught me that silence can be stronger than revenge. And you taught me that sometimes losing everything you thought you needed is the only way to find what you truly are." I closed the book feeling the weight of the words and how light I'd become since writing them. As I locked up and stepped outside, the night air felt soft against my skin. Somewhere across town, maybe Gordon was sitting in another cafe, haunted by the same memories I'd finally made peace with. But that wasn't my concern anymore. Because the story wasn't his anymore, it was mine. I looked up at the skyline one last time, the city lights reflecting in my eyes like stars. "Once I thought I needed someone to choose me," I whispered. "Now I know I was always enough on my own." And with that, I walked forward, not into a perfect future, but into a real one. Messy, unpredictable, and entirely my own. "You're just too soft, Dara. You don't have that hunger, that fire that separates the great from the average." Those were the words that shattered the quiet world I thought we'd built together. No shouting, no dramatic breakup. Just that a diagnosis delivered with surgical precision like a trainer critiquing poor form. I remember staring at him, the man I loved for 4 years, wondering when my warmth became his weakness. My name is Dara Wallace, 29 years old. For most of my adult life, I thought being dependable was enough, showing up working hard, being kind. But apparently kindness doesn't count as currency in Ronnie's new world. It all started with Apex Fitness. A sleek glass fortress with steel walls and an army of mirror-gazing disciples. Ronnie joined it to push himself, he said. At first I was proud. He'd always cared about fitness, but this time it felt different. He began talking about someone named Mia Sanders, his new personal trainer. At dinner, between bites of grilled chicken and sweet potato, her name kept slipping out like a secret prayer. "Mia says my recovery's trash because my protein timing's off. Mia says discipline is freedom. Mia says comfort kills ambition." At first I laughed. Does Mia also say humans are allowed to have dessert? He didn't even crack a smile. "Dara, that mindset is exactly why people stay average. Average. The word landed harder than he intended, maybe even harder than he realized. I'd always believed our relationship was built on balance, his energy, my calm. But now it felt like he was pulling away, like my very presence slowed his stride. The change was slow, like erosion. He started labeling our dinners as macros, not meals. Our weekends stopped being about movies and markets. They became recovery sessions. Every conversation was a sermon on optimization. He'd look at me across the table, not with affection, but with analysis, assessing my habits, my posture, even how long I slept. One night I cooked seared salmon with roasted asparagus, something he'd once requested weekly. He walked in after his alpha conditioning session. Shirt soaked in sweat, eyes wired from adrenaline. He sniffed the air and frowned. "What's the fat content on this?" "It's salmon, Ronnie. It's healthy." "Healthy isn't a macro," he said already, pulling out his phone to log something. "Mia says if you're not tracking, you're just guessing." I stared at him. "We used to eat food, Ronnie, not numbers." He gave a small, pitying smile, the kind you give to someone who doesn't get it. "It takes a level of discipline, Dara, you wouldn't understand. You've never had to push." He didn't notice that my hand trembled as I set down the pan, or maybe he did, and didn't care. That night I lay awake beside him. He was scrolling through his phone, laughing softly at something. I turned my head just enough to see a photo on his screen. Mia sweat slick and smiling mid-lift. His comment, "Power looks good on you." Something small inside me broke, but I stayed silent, because I still believed silence could fix things. I'd always been the quiet one, the listener, the anchor. But that night my silence started to feel like consent. The next morning I watched him dress. Every movement was purposeful, efficient, like he was auditioning for a commercial about discipline. I asked carefully, "Are you and Mia close?" He paused only for a second, just enough for truth to flicker across his face. "She's my trainer, Dara. Don't make this something it's not." "Then why do you talk about her more than us?" His jaw tightened. "Because she gets it." He left before I could reply. The door closed with that same soft finality that later became familiar, not loud enough to start a fight, but quiet enough to end one. I spent the day replaying his tone in my head, because that's what I do. I analyze, I overthink, I try to understand the hurt before I react to it. By evening, I decided maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I just missed us. So I planned something simple, sushi at the new place downtown, something that might remind him of normal life, of laughter and light. I drove to Apex Fitness to surprise him. The place was buzzing, steel-clanging, techno-pulsing air, thick with cologne and ego. Through the glass wall, I spotted him instantly. And her, Mia. She was spotting him on the bench press, her hands steady on the bar. He racked the weight, and she leaned in, whispering something that made him laugh. Too close, too familiar. Her palm lingered on his chest, and he didn't move it away. I didn't go inside. I just stood there, watching through the window, invisible. He looked alive in a way he hadn't around me for months, and that hurt more than anything. That night I chopped vegetables harder than necessary, the knife thudding rhythmically against the board. When he came home, I didn't look up. "We need to talk," I said. "Okay," he replied, tone flat, like I was a coworker asking for a performance review. I turned to face him. "I stopped by Apex today." He froze for just a second, then recovered. "Why I was going to surprise you." "Dinner plans." I let the sentence hang. "You didn't see me, but I saw you. With Mia." His chin lifted slightly, defensive, not ashamed. "And are you sleeping with her?" He laughed once, low and dismissive. "God, Dara, you always twist everything. Mia's the kind of woman who pushes me." "You wouldn't get that." "Pushes you." My voice cracked. Into what arrogance? That's when he looked at me like I was something small, something beneath the vision of greatness he'd built in his head. "You're comfortable," he said quietly. "You play it safe. You're a solid 6 out of 10 on your best day." The words didn't hit all at once, they seeped in slow and poisonous. 6 out of 10. Like I was an assignment graded by his new religion. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him see. But instead I just whispered, "I thought love wasn't a competition." He smiled, soft, cruel. "Love is easy. Excellence isn't." He walked out of the kitchen, shaking his head. I stayed behind, staring at the untouched plates of food. The same salmon, the same asparagus, suddenly tasting like failure. When I finally moved, it wasn't anger that guided me. It was clarity. I washed my hands, wiped the counter, and stared at my reflection in the black microwave door. I didn't see weakness. I saw someone exhausted from trying to prove her worth to a man addicted to mirrors. That night, he slept soundly beside me, breathing deep and even. I lay awake wide-eyed until dawn. By morning, my decision was made. If he wanted someone who'd push him to the edge, he could have her, but I would not stay to watch him fall. If he needed a 10, I whispered into the empty air he'd have to find her somewhere else. The next morning, sunlight cut across our apartment like a blade, sharp, unforgiving. Ronnie was already gone, probably at Apex for his dawn grind. His side of the bed was cold, the sheets crisp and perfectly tucked, like no one had ever slept there. It hit me how easy it must have been for him to erase me from his routine. I got up, made coffee, and stared at the mug in my hands. It was chipped, a small crack near the handle from when he'd accidentally dropped it last year. He'd kissed my forehead then and said, "Don't worry, I'll fix it." He never did. The mug still worked fine, just not for him anymore. That morning I decided I wouldn't ask for an apology. I just wanted honesty. But honesty, I was about to learn, was the one thing Ronnie no longer had the capacity for. When he came home that night, his aura filled the doorway before he did. Sweat glistened on his neck. His shirt clung to every muscle like armor. He didn't greet me. He went straight to the fridge, grabbed his protein shake, and gulped it down like medicine. "Hey," I said quietly. He glanced over, distracted. "Hey, what's up?" I took a breath. "Do you even see me anymore?" He frowned and confused. "What kind of question is that? You talk to me like I'm one of your stats. You look through me like I'm invisible. You spend more time quoting Mia than you do speaking to me." He rolled his eyes, muttering, "Here we go again." I stood, meeting his gaze squarely. "I just want to know what changed, Ronnie." He set down his shake with a deliberate clink. "You stopped wanting more." "What does that even mean?" "It means you're content with mediocrity. You coast. You don't push." He gestured around the apartment, at our modest furniture, the framed photos, the life we built together. "This, all of this, it's fine. But fine isn't good enough anymore." Something inside me snapped quietly like the soft pop of glass under pressure. "Do you even hear yourself?" I asked. "This isn't a TED Talk, Ronnie. This is our life." He crossed his arms, jaw flexing. "I can't explain it to you, Dara. You just don't get it. You don't have that drive. Because I don't live at the gym." He laughed, not kindly, but in disbelief. "Because you don't live for anything anymore." I froze. "I live for peace, for joy, for the things we used to have." "Peace," he repeated like it was an insult. "Peace is what people settle for when they've given up." I swallowed hard. "And obsession is what people call purpose when they've lost balance." His eyes darkened. "That's exactly what I mean, that mindset. That softness. You'll never understand what it's like to push past limits." Then came the words that would replay in my head for weeks. "I need a real woman who pushes her limits, not someone content being a 6 out of 10. It was like he'd slapped me, except worse because it was calculated. He said it without raising his voice, like he truly believed it was a statement of fact. I felt the air leave my body. A 6 out of 10. "Don't twist it," he said, exasperated. "I'm just being honest." Honest. The word dripped with cruelty, disguised as truth. He didn't want honesty. He wanted superiority. "You really think worth can be measured in numbers?" I asked softly. He shrugged. "Everything can. Data doesn't lie." That's when I realized he wasn't speaking to me anymore. He was quoting someone. He was quoting her. Silence filled the space between us. Not the comfortable kind we used to share, the one that came with familiarity and warmth. This silence was brittle, like the air before a storm. I turned away from him and picked up the chipped mug from the counter. It trembled slightly in my hand. "Remember this?" I asked. "You said you'd fix it." He looked at it uninterested. "It's just a cup, Dara." "No," I said, "it's a reminder." He frowned. "Of what?" I met his eyes, voice steady. "That you only fix what makes you look broken." For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe guilt. But then he hardened. "You're being dramatic." I nodded slowly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally seeing clearly." He sighed, already done with the conversation. "I'm not doing this right now. I've got an early session." And just like that, he walked out again. Door closing softly, always softly. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. It was strange how absence could take up so much space. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, I felt hollow, like I'd already been erased. So I reached for something else control, not over him, but over myself. I opened my laptop, found a new apartment listing, and sent an inquiry before I could talk myself out of it. Then I packed one small suitcase, Just essentials, a few clothes, my journal, the chipped mug. Everything else could stay here in the shrine he'd built to his perfection. As I zipped the suitcase shut, I caught my reflection in the dark window. Tired eyes, mascara smudged, shoulders trembling. But beneath that exhaustion, I saw something fierce awakening, something steady. I whispered into the dim room, "If he needs a 10, he'll have to find her somewhere else." And for the first time in months, I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I knew I was finally done auditioning for love. Moving out wasn't the dramatic storm I once imagined it would be. No shouting, no tears, no desperate pleas. Just quiet, deliberate motion, the kind that comes when grief finally burns itself out. I waited until Sunday morning. Ronnie always did alpha endurance on Sundays, 2 hours of cardio weights and ego at Apex Fitness. By 7 a.m., his water bottle and gym bag were gone. By 7:05, I was on my knees packing the pieces of a life that no longer fit me. The sound of cardboard flaps folding was oddly comforting. Every taped box felt like a sentence closing. I didn't take much, just the things that were undeniably mine. My books, my notebooks, my clothes, the old hiking boots from the trip where he'd once said he felt most alive. Everything else, the blender, the supplements, the mirrored scale, could rot in the temple he worshipped. I looked around our apartment one last time. It didn't feel like a home anymore. It looked like a showroom, sterile, sculpted hollow. The kind of place that photographed well but never felt warm. Maybe that was the perfect metaphor for him. I left the key on the counter beside the half-empty jar of peanut butter, his post-workout ritual, and whispered a quiet goodbye that no one would ever hear. My new apartment was smaller, older, quieter. The kind of place where the walls had texture and the windows rattled when it rained. It smelled faintly of jasmine from the neighbor's balcony. The first night I slept on a mattress on the floor surrounded by boxes and silence. But for the first time in months, the silence didn't suffocate me. It protected me. When I woke up, sunlight spilled across the floorboards, warm and unfiltered. No alarm, no protein shakes, no sound of iron weights clanging, just me breathing. I made coffee and drank it slowly without logging it into an app. Still the ache lingered. You don't just walk away from love, even toxic love, without bleeding a little. There were moments when I almost texted him just to see if he'd notice I was gone. But every time my finger hovered over his name, I remembered that night his voice calling me a 6 out of 10. His eyes scanning me like data. His smile when he told me I lacked fire. And I'd lower my phone again, breathing through the temptation like a craving I'd already decided not to feed. 3 days later, I found myself wandering near the park after work. Couples jogged past, kids laughed, dogs chased each other, normal life. I sat on a bench watching them and realized how small my world had become under his control. Every decision, every thought had been filtered through what he would approve of. I whispered almost to myself, I don't need to be optimized. I just need to exist. That night, while scrolling through local listings, something caught my eye. Intro to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. First class free. I laughed out loud. Ronnie would have mocked it rolling around on a mat with strangers for fun, but that was reason enough for me to go. The dojo was nothing like Apex. No mirrors, no neon slogans, just mats, quiet focus, and the faint scent of sweat and humility. The instructor, a calm man in his 40s, smiled as he handed me a white belt. Here we don't care how strong you are, he said, only how you breathe when you're losing. I didn't understand it then. But by the end of that first class, when a girl half my size submitted me in under a minute, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. There was no competition, no score, no measuring tape, just balance, leverage, breath. Every fall came with a lesson. Every defeat made me lighter. By the second week, I wasn't thinking about Ronnie during class. By the third, I'd stopped thinking about him afterward. It's funny how healing often hides in the mundane. I started sleeping better, cooking without guilt, saying no to things that drained me. Some nights I'd walk home from training sweaty and exhausted, and I'd look up at the city lights, the same ones that once reminded me of him, and they felt different, like they belonged to me again. One evening, I found an old photo of us, the hike at Grey Rock Peak. We were covered in dust, laughing arms, wrapped around each other. I almost deleted it, but instead I slipped it into a drawer. Not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of how even good memories can become poison in the wrong hands. A month passed before his name resurfaced. It came from a friend Ben, one of Ronnie's gym buddies, who'd stayed friendly with both of us. "Hey, Dara, just giving you a heads up. saw Ronnie and Mia at Whole Foods. It was weird. She looked terrified. He was lecturing her about peanut butter, like actually scolding her over the label. I read the message twice. The image was absurd, yet disturbingly familiar. Ronnie dissecting someone's worth over a jar of protein spread. Same script, new audience. I typed back, "Thanks, Ben. I'm fine," he replied. "I figured. Just thought you'd want to know." I didn't really, but part of me felt an uncomfortable mix of pity and relief. Pity for Mia, the new 10. Relief that it wasn't me anymore. Weeks later, another friend reached out, Lisa from our old hiking group. She met me for coffee, eyes wide with unease. "Dara, I saw them at a barbecue. It was bad. He was talking down to everyone." Mia just sat there, barely said a word. "She's lost so much weight, Dara. I think he's, I don't know, breaking her." I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the steam rise. "People like Ronnie don't change," I said quietly. "They just find new mirrors." Lisa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You got out just in time." I nodded, smiling faintly. No, I woke up just in time. That night, as I locked my apartment door, I realized something profound. Leaving hadn't been the end of my story. It had been the beginning of a quieter one. No grand revenge, no comeback speech, just peace. A peace earned, not given. I poured myself tea, set the chipped mug on the windowsill, and looked out at the rain shimmering on the glass. The world outside was still noisy, sirens, laughter, life. But inside my little apartment, everything was finally still. "Peace isn't the absence of noise," I whispered. "It's the absence of needing to be heard." And for the first time, I realized I wasn't missing him. He was missing this. It started with a whisper, a name dropped into a conversation I hadn't meant to overhear. At the cafe near my office, two women in gym gear were gossiping, not cruelly, just curiously. The guy from Apex, the one who calls himself King Mode. I heard he got banned. My stomach tightened before my mind caught up. King Mode. That had been Ronnie's handle on social media. I stirred my coffee slowly, pretending not to listen, but every word landed like a stone. Apparently there'd been an incident. Someone said he'd thrown a dumbbell. Another said he'd screamed at a client. The name Mia came up once quietly. And suddenly I wasn't hearing strangers anymore. I was hearing ghosts. That night when I got home, I opened my phone. Out of pure human weakness, I typed his name into the search bar. His once polished fitness page was gone, deleted. The king had fallen from his throne, and no one seemed surprised. I sat back, heart pounding. I should have felt vindicated. I should have smiled even just a little. But all I felt was tired. Tired for her. For the girl who believed his promises the same way I once did. I remembered how he used to say, "Pressure makes diamonds." Now it seemed that pressure had crushed everything around him instead. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from Rachel, one of Mia's friends, someone I barely knew. "Hey, Dara, this might be strange, but could we talk?" Curiosity prickled, mixed with unease. When we met, Rachel looked like she hadn't slept. Her tone was hesitant, her voice low. "I shouldn't even be telling you this, but I think she's in trouble." "Mia?" I asked. "Yeah." Ronnie. He's controlling everything. Her schedule, her phone, who she talks to. It's like she's disappearing. Rachel looked down at her hands. "She told me once that you were the calmest person she'd ever met, that you used to make him laugh. She said she missed that version of him." The words hit like a bruise I didn't know was still there. "Rachel," I said softly, "that version of him doesn't exist anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. "She's scared, Dara. He's not right. She tried to leave once, and he locked her out of their place with her things still inside." I sat in silence for a long moment, fighting the instinct to react, to fix, to help. But I knew better now. That path was a trap disguised as compassion. "I'm sorry she's going through that," I said finally. "But I can't be the person who saves her. He made sure I barely survived my time with him. I won't go back into that fire." Rachel nodded, though her eyes pleaded for more. "I understand," she whispered. I just didn't know who else to tell. We parted with a hug that lingered, two women both haunted by the same man in different ways. That night I dreamed of the mountain Grey Rock Peak. In the dream, Ronnie and I were back at the summit, but the sky was darker this time. When I turned to look at him, it wasn't Ronnie standing beside me. It was Mia, pale, hollow-eyed, clutching her phone like a lifeline. When I reached for her, she whispered, "You got out. Why didn't you warn me?" I woke up drenched in sweat. The city outside my window was quiet and different. I sat there for hours, watching the lights flicker like distant campfires. and I realized how survivors carry guilt even for storms they didn't cause. Weeks passed. The messages from mutual friends slowed, then stopped, until one night my phone lit up again, an unknown number. Dara, it's Sarah. I don't know if you remember me from Mia's book club. I remembered vaguely. Sarah had been kind, quiet, thoughtful. Her next words made my blood run cold. I saw her today, at a cafe. She was wearing sunglasses, but when she took them off, she had a black eye. She said it was an accident, but, Dara, I don't think it was. My breath caught in my throat. Sarah's voice trembled. She kept looking over her shoulder. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm really worried. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. It wasn't shock, it was recognition. That same low-grade terror I'd once lived with, not fear of being hit, but fear of never being heard. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. Please just make sure she knows she's not crazy. That's all you can do. When the call ended, I sat in the dark staring at my reflection in the window. For the first time in months, I felt something dangerously close to anger, not at Ronnie, but at the version of me that used to think love could heal a man like him. The next evening, I stayed late at the dojo. We practiced escapes, learning how to breathe under pressure, how to use calm as leverage. Every movement felt poetic. Every fall had meaning. When class ended, my instructor clapped me on the shoulder. You've changed, he said. You used to move like you were apologizing. Now you move like you own your space. I smiled faintly. Maybe I finally learned that peace doesn't mean shrinking. A few days later, another message came, not from Rachel, not from Sarah. An email. No name in the address. Just a jumble of letters and numbers. Subject line, you were right. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The first line was enough to make my pulse quicken. Dara, it's Mia. Please don't delete this. The words that followed were frantic, desperate, and all too familiar. She talked about fear, about being isolated, about realizing too late that love wasn't supposed to feel like walking on glass. Every paragraph was soaked in regret and panic. I don't know what to do. He's watching everything. This is the only email he doesn't know about. I thought I was strong, but I'm not. I can't breathe here. Please, Dara. Please help me. My eyes blurred as I reached the end. You warned me. I didn't listen. I should have. You're the only one who will understand. I sat there frozen, not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much, and I knew caring could kill you if you weren't careful. I closed the laptop and let out a long, shaking breath. Somewhere in another apartment, another woman was living my old life, the same silence, the same isolation. But this time I wasn't the one trapped inside it. Her empire's collapsing, I whispered to the empty room, and I can't be her rescue plan. Still the guilt lingered like smoke, because I knew deep down that every kingdom Ronnie built would end the same way, with someone else paying the price for his crown. I didn't sleep that night. The glow from my laptop stayed on the entire time, Mia's email open on the screen like a ghost that refused to fade. Every line replayed in my head, her pleas, her panic, the echoes of things I'd once said myself but never dared to write. I thought it was passion, but it's control. I can't breathe here. Please, Dara, save me. That last line sat heavy in my chest, because she didn't mean help me. She meant replace me. Step into the fire so I can step out. And I couldn't do it. Not again. Not ever. I sat on the edge of my bed, hands trembling over the keyboard. The city outside was quiet, a rare, windless calm that made the night feel suspended in glass. Somewhere 2 blocks away, a siren wailed briefly, then faded. I opened a blank reply. For a long time, the cursor just blinked, a small pulsing reminder that I had a choice. The old me, the fixer, the caretaker, the empath would have sent comfort, would have driven across the city, knocked on the door, and begged Ronnie to be reasonable. But I wasn't her anymore. I had built peace out of ashes, and I wasn't going to burn it down for closure that wasn't mine to claim. I took a breath and began to type. To M. Sanders, subject, you were right. Mia, I read your message twice. Once with my heart, once with my head. The first time I felt everything you wanted me to feel, guilt, pity, the urge to help. The second time I saw it clearly, you don't need saving. You need to wake up. You said Ronnie's strength drew you in. I understand. It drew me in too, but you mistook control for confidence and noise for power. What you're living now isn't love, Mia. It's worship of someone who only loves mirrors. You wanted a king. You got one. I can't be the rescue you're looking for because rescuing you means walking back into the cage I already escaped. You were right about one thing. I do understand you. That's why I know you'll never find peace until you stop asking others to grant it. I hope you choose freedom. But my peace is not a negotiation. Dara. I read it once, twice. It didn't feel cruel. It felt final. Then I hit send. The sound of the mouse click echoed louder than it should have, like a door closing in an empty hallway. I closed the laptop, powered off my phone, and sat in the stillness that followed. For a long time, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. Outside the city pulsed headlights, rain fragments of other people's stories moving on without me. Inside, I felt something deep and rare. Not happiness, not triumph, peace. Days passed, no reply, no calls, only silence, which for once didn't scare me. At the dojo, my instructor announced I'd earned my blue belt. He tied it around my waist, his hand steady. "Congratulations," he said. "You don't fight like someone running away anymore." I smiled, breath steady. "I'm not," I said. "I'm standing still." That night, walking home under the drizzle, I stopped at a streetlight. Across the intersection, a couple argued something small, probably trivial. The woman's voice cracked. The man rolled his eyes and turned away. And for a second, I saw myself years ago, trying to make a man listen who only wanted to hear himself. The memory didn't sting anymore. It just passed. At home, I found a letter slipped under my door. No name, just a single sheet of paper folded neatly. Inside was one sentence written in shaky handwriting. I left him. No signature, but I knew who it was. I stood there in silence, the paper trembling slightly between my fingers. Then I folded it back and set it on the counter beside my chipped coffee mug. I didn't text her, didn't call, didn't respond. Some stories don't need a sequel. Some endings are sacred in their quietness. Weeks later, I hiked Grey Rock Peak again, alone this time. The trail was the same, but everything felt different. The air was sharp, the sun unfiltered. At the summit, I stood where we once stood together, Ronnie and me, and looked out over the endless stretch of sky. Last time I'd felt small beside him. This time I felt infinite without him. I closed my eyes, letting the wind sting my cheeks, and whispered into the horizon. "You said I wasn't built for greatness. You were right. I was built for peace." And peace, I finally understood, was far rarer than greatness would ever be.